Woo! That was some amazing grace. Thank you, Mark Kapner. Hey, Mark, you have an important anniversary coming up. 50 years ago, next month, Mark appeared at Woodstock with Country Joe and the Fish. Right? Right? Woo! And it's an amazing grace that you are here today, because today I have a few things to say about us, about the baby boomer generation. Actually, it seems increasingly foolish to call us baby anything, right? And I'm guessing that Mark and I are not the only ones in the room here today. Yes? Boomers? Oh, yeah. And so, my fellow boomers, have you had this experience? A thought crosses your mind, like this one. I wonder if I should move to Mexico. And the next day, you pick up the New York Times, and there's a story about a flood of people your age moving to Mexico. It's as if being part of this giant, misshapen demographic bulge, there are no original thoughts. Anything you think will have been thought by a million others in your cohort and may even be a trend by the time you get to it. Have a hot flash? Count on it. The Times will run a story that week about the cultural impact of a jillion women all entering menopause at the same time. All that fierceness set loose in the world. And I can't believe I just said menopause in the pulpit. But that's also something that happens when you get older. You find yourself doing and saying things that you couldn't imagine just a few years earlier. But it's good to laugh at ourselves. Angels can fly because they take themselves lightly, said G.K. Chesterton, although I don't think he'd encountered the angel in the poem we read, grumpily longing for the old days, the days before the miracles of cell phones and the internet and everywhere connectivity without community. Well, more about that later. Right now I want to keep laughing because humor truly is one of the gifts of age. My father was a funny guy his whole life, making up silly songs that I still remember and will sing for you in private if you really want me to. Dad lived to the age of 75, suffering near the end with bladder cancer that forced him to carry a catheter bag with him everywhere in a satchel. One day I overheard him laughing on the phone with an old friend. "I've been retired 20 years," he was saying, "and here I am at the end, strapped again to this goddamn briefcase." Well, my relationship with my father was fraught down through the years, but that day my heart filled with admiration. He had given me a glimpse of one of the ways to age gracefully. My mother never got to be old. As I hover on the brink of turning 70, I've outlived her by more than a decade. At my nephew's wedding in Colorado last week, My brother remarked that I look more like Mom every time he sees me. I knew what he meant. How strange it is, I said, to be seeing her face in my mirror now, when she never got to be this age. My brother said, well, you get to be this age for her. I often have that thought myself. So next week, I retire from professional ministry. I go from being minister for hire to minister in the world, or fool for hire to fool in the world. It's all the same thing, really, right, Carmen? To mark these occasions, I got my first and probably only tattoo. It's true. Thank you. It's a couple of ginkgo leaves and the words, "Only connect." The words on my arm are not about digital connectivity, but connecting to people face to face and heart to heart, and connecting to my deepest dreams, my authentic self, to my vocation as distinct from my profession. No, no, there is no going back, the poet Wendell Berry wrote. Less and less you are that possibility you were. But what new possibilities might there be? And I've been pondering this. I know at 70 or almost 70, I'm still a younger elder. I've been privileged to be surrounded by many in this congregation who have attained the luminosity that shines from you, from the elders. You've all taught me so much. In watching you, I can let go of any fear about growing older, because I see that you are so much more than some diminished version of your younger selves, as elders are too often portrayed in popular culture. And it's true that old age is a ceremony of losses. As the poet Donald Hall said, I don't mean to minimize the griefs that inevitably mount as the years add up. I also know that at this moment I have the privilege of immoderate good health and a measure of financial security, which is not the case for everyone, of course. But for many of us, and speaking generally, sociologists say that the happiest people on earth are women aged 65 to 79. I found that in a book by Mary Pfeiffer called Women Rowing North. And the human beings on the planet most practiced at being joyful are two men in their 80s who have experienced uncommon grief as well, Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, whose conversations about how to cultivate joy are recorded in the aptly titled Book of Joy. A common theme in both these books is the wisdom that comes with age. There's a lot that happens that we can't control. We can't head off the ceremony of losses, but we can be in charge of how we respond to loss and to joy. Meet each day as it comes. There's another book that's capturing my imagination just now, one recently posted on Instagram by my daughter-in-law. I bought it immediately based on her recommendation, but probably would have grabbed it for the title alone, How to Do Nothing. It's not really about doing nothing, because reading is not nothing, of course. But it's about how to choose carefully what we might or should be doing at any given moment within an economic culture that works to steal and fracture our attention. In the introduction, the author, Jenny Odall, said she wrote it as a field guide to doing nothing as an act of political resistance to the attention economy. This writer's mission is to build up an image of doing nothing so it can stand as a bulwark against the productivity-obsessed environment in which we are willingly or not immersed. And this, she hopes, will help restore individuals who can then help restore communities, human and beyond. One of the questions I've had about myself as I've headed toward retirement is how to escape what Odall calls the tyranny of usefulness. Though the prospect of unstructured time that would come with retirement was immediately delicious, I worried. My work as a minister and a faithful fool was the main way I knew I was of use in the world. Would I feel useless if I didn't carry these roles? I know I'm not the only one who suffers from the tyranny of usefulness. Meg Whitaker Green of this congregation gave me permission to tell you about the note she has posted on her bathroom mirror as a reminder to herself. Meg, it says, I won't be needing your help today. Love, God. So if I'm doing nothing as an act of resistance, and if restoring myself leads to restoring communities, well, that's not useless. But I've always known this. What the worry really is about is constructing a sense of worth outside the social and professional identity that work in the world confers on an individual. I wonder if some of you who are retired have asked yourself these questions. Or some of you are not yet retired, are thinking ahead and wondering about them too. We need to think about this stuff because we might all live to be 100. That's what the financial people tell us we should plan for, those of us fortunate enough to have had means to save for retirement. And it's an amazing privilege to reach a point where it's feasible to stop doing work for money. But it isn't money alone we need to save for our old age. To live a long and healthy life, we need to save and grow our social capital too. I was surprised to learn recently that the most important factors predicting longevity are not weight, exercise, or hypertension. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with how much you drink or whether you smoke. No, the top two factors predicting longevity have to do with your social interactions. Number two is whether you have a number of close personal relationships, be they family of origin or family of choice or a circle of friends. Now that didn't surprise me. What surprised me is that the number one predictor of longevity is something the sociologists call social integration, which basically boils down to how many people you talk to in a given day. Now that includes talking to your sister or your son on the phone, or your neighbor over the fence, or your best friend over lunch. And it also includes talking to the person who makes your coffee, or the one who brings your mail. Do you engage with these people in your life? Do you chat with the checker at the grocery store? Evidence is you'll live longer, healthier, and happier if you do. Susan Pinker, who revealed this scale of longevity factors in a TED Talk, has also written a book that explores the value of face-to-face conversations, many of them throughout the day. She called it the village factor. Finding a village can be challenging for elders who want to age at home and who may have health concerns that make it unfeasible to bop over to the corner cafe for a coffee and a chat with the barista. If that's you, let me say this. I am really glad you came to church. And if you're joining us on the live stream from home, I'm glad you're here too. Because for many of us, as we age, church can be the village that we need, or part of the village. This congregation does a good job, the best I've seen among all the churches I've served, at supporting one another through all the changes in a life. Whether it's the joyful stress of coming of age, marriage, and childbirth, the sorrows that come with loss and grief, or the changes of aging. And we want to get better at it. Really, we have to get better. Because that demographic bulge of rapidly aging generation is happening here too. Marty Vanderlaan and others of the lay chaplains have initiated conversations with the Society for Community Work and other leaders here about what we as a congregation might do to get ready to make sure we have the capacity to help one another. The lay chaplains are accumulating a wealth of experience with the good people of this congregation, accompanying families as they negotiate the balance between families' needs for elders to be safe and elders' needs for dignity and independence. Talk to the lay chaplains if you'd like to be part of that conversation. This work of care, of sustenance, of maintenance is some of the most important work a church can do. And I'm not trying to establish some kind of hierarchy, because when children are being locked in cages and separated from their families, raising our voices against these horrors is in the same category of tending and care. All of it work that is undervalued in a culture that elevates the measurables of productivity and attention grabs. Caring, tending, speaking out when we witness a lack of care, all of these are necessary, and all are acts of resistance. Less and less, you are that possibility you were, wrote Wendell Berry, the poet, ecologist, and farmer who incidentally turns 85 next week. Every day you have less reason not to give yourself away. This comes into sharper focus as I get older, as I allow myself more fully to appreciate how life is flying by and how very sweet life is, and how it can be a vocation for each of us to make it sweet for ourselves, for one another, and for everyone.